If you find BMW's naming scheme just a little bit complicated, then fear not, you're not alone. Today we're taking a look at the 2015 BMW M235. The M235 essentially replaces the BMW M135iS. The previous BMW 1 Series was co-designed with the 2006 BMW 3 Series. They shared some very similar design components and similar suspension styles, etc. The BMW 2 Series, however, is more closely related to the current generation BMW 3 Series and BMW 4 Series, and as such it has grown rather significantly over the 1 Series. Up front, you'll notice that the 2 Series is a little bit wider than the 1 Series. That helps give it a little bit more elegant look. It also makes it look a little bit wider, a little bit lower to the ground, even though the height off the ground hasn't really changed that much. There are three different front-end looks for the 2 Series. The 228i has a choice between all three of them, and the 235i gets only this look we're seeing right here. Now that's largely because the 235i comes only as the M235i, and that M is important. At just over 174 inches long, the 2 Series has grown about 3 inches versus the 1 Series. That helps give it a little bit less of a cartoonish side profile, I'm told, although I actually thought the 1 Series Coupe was fairly attractive. Because the 2 Series and the 4 Series are so closely related, the weight is very similar. This is actually only about 100 pounds less than a 435i. BMW is slicing their performance sausage very, very finely these days. And as a result, we have IS, we have M Sport, we have M Performance, then we have regular old M. M Sport is probably the easiest to explain. It's essentially an appearance and handling package that you can get on a wide variety of BMW models. Sometimes it's also called the M Sport line. Big thing to know with M Sport is that you don't get any extra power out of the engine. The next step up is the IS, where we get some additional power under the hood, and that's what the 135iS was. It's also what you'll see in the BMW Z4 because there is a Z4 IS package. We get something different when we start putting the M in front of the number rather than after the number. This is the 3-digit line, so this is an M235i. That means that this gets more power under the hood. We also get braking improvements with M brakes. We get better handling and a different appearance to the outside and the inside of the vehicle. We also get the M adaptive suspension in this vehicle, but we do not have the M dual clutch transmission that you find in true M models, and we don't really have any substantive changes to the body, so you won't find a carbon fiber roof or anything like that when you put the M in front of the 3 digits. That of course leaves room for the M2, which will have yet more power, yet more handling performance, and likely some changes to the body as well, like some carbon fiber bits or possibly some aluminum bits. Out back we see a version of the same BMW style that you get in the rest of the coupe models. We have tail lamps that do not wrap onto the trunk lid. Importantly, however, that means that the opening here is a little bit smaller because BMW wanted to give this appearance of a larger tail lamp. Under the hood we have 2 engines to choose from. Things start out with a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, basically the same one we see in a wide variety of BMW models. It produces 240 horsepower and 255 pound-feet of torque. The M235i gets this 3-liter single-turbo inline-6 engine. Now some people are a little bit confused because BMW does use the twin-power terminology. All that really means is that we have a single turbo with 2 inlets on the exhaust side. Making that a little bit confusing is the fact that BMW does use a twin-turbo version of this 3-liter engine in some vehicles in their lineup, but this particular model is a single turbo. It produces 320 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. You'll notice that is a decent upgrade over the 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque tune that you find in most BMW vehicles with the 3-liter engine. It's also a little bit more torque than we got in the 135iS. Like the 2-liter engine, you can get the 3-liter engine with either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic. You can opt for all-wheel drive for $1,800 extra. Unless you're buying the M235i convertible, in which case that is only rear-wheel drive at this time. You'll notice this is a little bit different than the M3, the M4, the M5, and the M6 because this has the option of all-wheel drive. And BMW considers those true M models, other than the SUVs, to be dedicated rear-wheel drive machines, even though other manufacturers have started adding all-wheel drive to their lineups. If you want more power, we do expect the M2 to get 365 horsepower, and it might end up getting BMW's dual-clutch 7-speed automatic instead of this regular old ZF 8-speed automatic. When it comes to fuel economy, obviously the 4-cylinder engine does get better economy than the 6-cylinder engine, but you'll also get better fuel economy in the real world in the 8-speed automatic rather than 6-speed manual, especially if you do a lot of highway driving, because it really drops the RPMs at highway speed. Front seat comfort comes in at 9 out of 10 points. These are very comfortable seats in the M235i. I have a 4-way adjustable lumbar support, 2-position seat memory, and an extending thigh cushion, which makes it a lot easier for taller drivers and shorter drivers to find a comfortable driving position. We also have a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. Because we are in an M Performance model, we also get inflatable side bolsters on the seat, and the passenger seat has the same range of motion as the driver's seat, including that four-way adjustable lumbar support, the inflatable bolsters, and the extending thigh cushion. Like most BMW coupes, getting into the back is very easy. We have a little handle right here to lean the seat forward, and if you want to move the seat forward further than that, it's an electric adjusting mechanism. So we just press this button on the seat right there, it moves forward. That retains your seat memory position, because if we press the back button, it will go right back to that memory position. Now the 2 Series is not an enormous vehicle, and it is a strict 4-seater, so there's no center seat belt. Now if I move this front seat back to the position I had it in, comfortable for driving, I still have about 1 inch of legroom left back here, which is a little bit surprising. The limiting factor really is the headroom. I do have to cock my head to one side in order to sit up straight, but I could slouch a little bit for an extended period of time because I do get adequate legroom. The surprising thing in this back seat is that this is not that much smaller than the BMW 4 Series. Aiding in cargo carrying practicality, we do get a split 60/40 folding rear bench seat with a very large pass-through to the trunk. So why pay extra for the 4 Series? Well, it gets a much bigger trunk. This trunk is about 1 cubic foot larger than the BMW 1 Series, but it is still fairly small. Since the 4 Series was designed to be a hardtop convertible as well, they had to have somewhere for that massive hardtop to go, and as a result, it has a fairly sizable trunk. You'll notice that the opening to this trunk is also a little bit small. That means this 26-inch roller bag can't go in the trunk in that direction. We do have to lay it on its side and then tip it up if we want it to stay in the trunk. That makes it a little bit less convenient than some of the other vehicles. You should also know that this is as far back in the trunk as you can jam that 26-inch roller bag. As with many European vehicles, lifting up the cargo load floor reveals no sign of a spare tire. We do get a tire inflator kit right there on that side. You'll find the battery and some sound deadening material. Because of the size of this trunk and the small opening, I'm going to have to give this 6 out of 10 points when it comes to my exclusive trunk comfort index, although we do get very convenient helper handles on either side of the trunk lid to help you close it. Taking a quick spin around the interior, we do have fixed position seat belts for both the driver and the front passenger, and 2-way adjustable headrests. The M235i is less expensive than a 435i, so we get interior parts quality that is a little bit lower. We still have a lot of soft touch plastics, but we don't have quite as soft of an armrest, and we do find more hard touch plastics lower in the door. We also find more hard plastic trim lower in the dashboard and a slightly smaller glove box. In the center of the dash, we have a style that is very similar to the 3 and 4 Series, with the iDrive screen perched high up in the dashboard, sort of this little tablet grafted onto the dashboard look. We have a center channel speaker right behind that. If you get iDrive with navigation, we get a slightly larger screen in the center, as well as a slightly different control dial. 2 large air vents, a single lock and unlock button right there, single slot optical disc player with preset buttons right across the front. Like the up-level versions of iDrive, these preset buttons can be assigned to various system functions, so they're not just radio presets, and they are touch controlled, so as you can see that display changes a little bit when I run my finger across it. Moving down from that, you can see that we have 2-zone climate control and very large cup holders right there, easily able to accommodate large takeout sodas, 12-volt power outlet right there. Also have a small storage cubby right behind all that. Since we are in the M model, we of course get an M shifter. Reverse is to the left and up, which is not necessarily my preference. I do prefer it to the right and down, but it is a very nice short throw shifter. Over here we have the drive mode selector button. We can choose between Sport Plus, Sport, Comfort, and Eco Pro. This changes not just the way the transmission and engine behave if you get the automatic transmission, but also the way the suspension behaves, because the M235i does get an adaptive suspension system. Because we don't have navigation in our particular model, we get a slightly different iDrive controller. It only moves left and right and rotates around. It does not move up and down. We don't get the finger writing recognition pad up top. Behind that we have a softly padded center armrest. It does slide forward and backward. It also opens to reveal a small storage cubby, have a wallet in there. It's also where you'll find the USB and auxiliary input. Over on the driver's side, we have a very compact instrument cluster with only 3 dials. You'll notice that we do not get a temperature gauge in the M235i. We have our tachometer on the right, speedometer over on the left, and a very small multifunction display below that. If you get the optional navigation system, then we do get a larger multifunction display which does cover the bottom portion of the tachometer area and gives you a little bit more information. Because we are in the M235i, we do get BMW's M steering wheel. This is essentially the same steering wheel we find in other M models, except we don't get the M Sport programming mode buttons right over here on either side of the cruise control. We have a dedicated phone button down here, voice command button, volume up, down, track forward, backward, scroll dial right there. You can see that does act with that little screen in the center. We have our cruise control buttons right over here, speed up, down, resume on this side. When it comes to acceleration, I'm going to give the M235i 9 out of 10 points. I do expect the M2 obviously to be faster since it's going to get more power under the hood, But most importantly, the CLA45 AMG is faster than this. It's about 4 to 5 tenths of a second faster. 0 to 60 happened very repeatably in about 5 seconds in this vehicle. Keep in mind that we do have the 6-speed manual transmission. You'll actually go faster if you get the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. It has more advantageous low gears. When it comes to handling, the 2 Series feels larger than the 1 Series. It is pretty obvious out on the road. You'll notice this does have a more substantial feel to it, very much like the BMW 3 Series and the 4 Series, but it actually feels more direct than either the 3 or the 4. Part of that's down to the quick steering ratio. This is only 2.2 turns lock to lock, which is a very, very quick steering rack. It can make the 2 Series feel a hair twitchy on certain roads, but overall I like that feel. It's kind of go-karty. With 245 width tires in the back and 225 width tires up front and 3,500 pounds of curb weight, the 235 can feel a little bit under-tired at times. Now, the handling is still excellent because the weight balance is excellent in this vehicle, but I would prefer larger tires. Obviously, again, something you can expect with the M2. When it comes to handling, I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 points. Mercedes-Benz CLA45 AMG, again, handles a little bit better in certain circumstances, but it doesn't feel the same as this vehicle. This feels an awful lot more connected to the driver, especially in rear-wheel drive form. That really is what's unique about this compared to the Mercedes or the Audi competition, is that those two vehicles are all-wheel drive, and this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Even when you get all-wheel drive in this vehicle, it actually tends to send most of the power to the back unless it's needed up front. It's really obvious out on these sweeping corners on the road that we're on right here. This has a very nimble feel out on the road that you just don't get in an all-wheel drive car. The other thing that we get in this vehicle that we don't get in the Mercedes or the Audi is a real manual transmission, and that gives us a much more direct feel out on the road. Part of the M235 package is the adaptive damping system, and that helps us get 9 out of 10 points when it comes to the ride. I can put this in the Sport and Sport Plus mode, which really firms up the ride, but even in those modes, this is still a relatively compliant sport vehicle. You can tell this is a really well-designed suspension because even when rocking the steering wheel back and forth like that, we get very minimal body roll. We get very little pitch and dive when accelerating or when braking. But even so, the adaptive suspension system soaks up the potholes on broken pavement very, very well, and it really improves the overall suspension feel versus the BMW 135iS. The 135iS sometimes felt very upset, especially in the rear over broken pavement, and that does not happen in the M235. When it comes time to stop, the large M brakes help give us 9 out of 10 points when it comes to braking. Fade resistance is absolutely excellent, but stopping distances could be a little bit shorter in my estimation. Again, that has more to do with the tire size than the actual brakes themselves. I would expect the M2 to be better than that. Of course, if you got some really sticky rubber all the way around or upped your tire size, especially in the front, you'd probably get better braking distances. 3,500 pounds isn't exactly heavy, and it's about the same weight as a number of BMW's other products, but this feels a little bit lighter, a little bit more nimble than them. When it comes to cabin noise, I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 points. You'll notice the engine sounds a little bit noisy right now, but if I put it in Comfort or Eco Pro mode, it gets a decent amount quieter. That's because we're not getting real engine noise in this cabin, we're actually getting digital engine noise through the audio system speakers. At 65 miles an hour, this engine is spinning about 2,500 RPM. That's a decent amount faster than in the automatic transmission version. That's why we get much better highway fuel economy over there. In the automatic, it's not really that difficult to get about 30 miles per gallon on the highway if you're treating it very gently. I've been averaging about 19.9. Obviously, if fuel economy was your thing, you'd get the 2-liter turbocharged version of the 2 Series. That actually is a very nice package. It feels a little bit less front-heavy than the M235i. The electric power steering in the 2 Series is definitely a little bit numb, but this is still a very engaging car out on the road. This is an awful lot of fun to fling on your favorite winding mountain road. And fling it you certainly can because this vehicle is incredibly quick in the corners, in the straights, pretty much everywhere. And this engine revs up to 7,000 RPM. It has an excellent exhaust note to it. In fact, I think we're just going to slow down just so we can listen to that exhaust note yet again. Absolutely glorious. It also has a very soft rev limiter. So if you're, for instance, as we were before, in second gear, and we're flooring it, has a very soft rev limiter, so it doesn't sound too weird. Everything really comes together for the 2 Series out on very small winding mountain roads like we're on right here. This is where the really quick steering ratio of the 2 Series has some excellent benefit. You get that solid rear-wheel drive feel there in the corners. The stability control system is very well programmed, so it kicks in early, but it kicks in very smoothly and almost imperceptibly unless you're doing something really wrong. It really makes easy work out of these really tight corners on the road that we're on here. And the dynamic suspension system, even though we're in sport mode, means that it's soaking up these bumps and giving us maximum adhesion with the tires without really feeling rough or overly harsh. The 2 Series really is the ultimate 3 Series coupe. This does not feel quite like the BMW 3 Series that some people wax poetic about, but it is as close as you can get in today's market. Pricing for 2015 starts at $32,100 for the 228i, making it one of the least expensive BMWs in the United States. If you want to add all-wheel drive, that will cost $1,800 and will take 1/10 of a second off your 0 to 60 time. If you want to be able to drop your top, they will sell you the convertible version for $37,900. All-wheel drive's also available on that. If you want the M235i that we've been taking a look at here, that starts at $43,100. Now you do get some additional feature content in addition to that engine. Most notably, we get the adaptive suspension, we get the upgraded brakes, we get the different looks all the way around, and the variable ratio steering. You can add all-wheel drive to your M235i for another $1,800, and that will reduce the 0 to 60 time on this vehicle by 2/10 of a second, which is a notable improvement. Like the 228i, the M235i also comes in a convertible version, but that's rear-wheel drive only and will set you back $47,700. My realistic base price is a little bit higher because I would recommend getting the Harman Kardon sound system. With this, the base sound system isn't too bad, but it doesn't have the same range as that optional sound system. Now you will find slightly nicer sound systems in some of the competition. I also highly recommend the leather interior over the Sensatec interior. It breathes a little bit better, making the seats a little bit more comfortable. That navigation system will set you back over $2,000, but we do get some of those smartphone integration services and the online features bundled with it. Comparisons are a little bit tricky with the 2 Series in general, and very specifically with the M235i, because there really isn't anything else out there like this, other than perhaps a Porsche Cayman. Mercedes' CLA45 AMG is often compared to the M235i, but they're quite different animals. Now the CLA45 AMG starts higher at $48,500, and it can get $4,000 to $5,000 more than a comparably equipped BMW 2 Series. The Mercedes gets more power out of its 2-liter turbocharged engine than we get out of this 3-liter turbocharged engine, and it also has a dual clutch transmission. The dual clutch transmission and the extra power allow it to go from 0 to 60 nearly a half second faster than the M235i. Now on the downside, that CLA45 AMG is only all-wheel drive, and it is based on a front-wheel drive platform. That means it is heavier up front than this vehicle. It also means that there is no rear-wheel drive model, and the model we're taking a look at here has very different driving dynamics out on the road. In addition, even though we get 2 extra doors in the back, we don't really get much more room than the M235i. Those back seats are very, very cramped. On the flip side, of course, that CLA45 AMG is very attractive. This is elegant and restrained in terms of styling, and the CLA45 definitely screams, "Look at me." Of course, I've said it before, but I will say it again, that CLA45 AMG is also incredibly fast. 4.2 seconds, 0 to 60 repeatably with all-wheel drive, and essentially a robotized manual transmission is incredibly fast. The Audi S3 is similar to the Mercedes in that it is a front-wheel drive based vehicle with all-wheel drive. It starts less than this at $41,100, but also has less power, 292 horsepower. The only transmission available in the S3 is a 6-speed DSG, so it actually has 1 less speed than the CLA250, CLA45 AMG, and 2 less speeds than the automatic version of this vehicle. There's also no manual transmission available. 0 to 60 times are slightly slower than the M235i, and the driving dynamic is very, very different. At this moment, the S3 is also available only as a 4-door sedan. There is no convertible version of the S3, which I'm a little bit disappointed with. Although the S3 weighs about the same as the M235i, this definitely handles better than the S3. You can also get the M235i with all-wheel drive, in which case it will accelerate definitely faster than the S3. In addition to being a little bit less expensive, the S3 also has more room in the back. We get 4 practical doors, and we get an up-level audio system that does sound better than the up-level sound system available in the M235i. It also has about twice the power capability as well. Even so, the S3 is not nearly as engaging as the M235, especially if you get the rear-wheel drive version. A better comparison to the M235i would be the Audi RS3, but the RS3 is not available in the United States at this time, and at the moment in Europe it's only a wagon, which is very, very different than the 2-door coupe that we're taking a look at here. That RS3 uses a turbocharged 5-cylinder engine, which has a very unique sound, but most importantly it produces more power and is definitely faster than the M235i. It's a very direct competitor to that CLA45. However, like that CLA45 AMG, it is an all-wheel drive vehicle only. There is no rear-wheel drive version because it is based on a front-wheel drive platform. We're being told that if the RS3 ever makes it to the United States, it will likely be as the sedan, and it will probably be about $5,000 to $10,000 more expensive than the M235i. Porsche's Cayman is an interesting option, but we don't get rear seats in the Porsche like we get in the BMW. It also is considerably more expensive. The Cayman starts over $53,000, and if you want this level of performance, you're buying the Cayman S at over $64,000. I know I'm going to start an internet storm of activity, but the Cayman S also has a less advantageous weight balance than the BMW. The Cayman and Cayman S are probably the best balanced traditional Porsche models, but they still have 54% of their weight in the rear. Now that is better than a 911 that has over 61% of the weight in the rear, but it's not as ideal as the near 50-50 weight balance we get in this model. This is ever so slightly front heavy. There's some definite advantages to being a little bit heavier in the back and a little bit lighter up front, but for the average driver, this vehicle is going to give much more predictable driving dynamics, even with the advent of modern stability control systems. The Cayman is a little bit nicer to drive. It definitely feels smaller than this out on the road. The steering is a little bit more direct, and it's just more engaging overall. The big question is it $20,000 more engaging? And in my opinion, it's definitely not. If I were shopping in this segment, I suspect that I would probably get the Audi S3. I would probably just live with the fact that it doesn't handle quite as well as this vehicle, but I value that up-level audio system a little bit better, and I like the four-door idea. The S3 is also a little bit less expensive, but of course it doesn't have the same level of performance or the same level of engagement as we get out of the BMW M235i. Now again, as I say that, I don't really think that the S3 competes that directly with the M235i because it's a four-door sedan, and this is not a four-door sedan. So in that vein, if you're looking at two-door coupes, especially around this price range, or even up to that $65,000 price range that the Cayman S is priced at, it's really hard to go wrong with the M235i. I would get this over the BMW 435i. Even though this is only 100 pounds lighter than the BMW 4 Series, it certainly feels smaller out on the road. It feels more engaging. It's also quicker thanks to the 330 horsepower we get under the hood. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Go ahead and click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Comment on this video, tell me what you liked and didn't like about the M235i. Check out those related videos down there. Find me over on Facebook, find me over on Twitter, and I'll see you next week.